They told you Maat was just another Egyptian goddess with a feather, didn't they? A quaint moral tale about being good so you could pass some ancient afterlife test. Here's what they didn't tell you. This is one of the greatest spiritual thefts in human history. Maat isn't a goddess at all. She's the operating system of reality itself. Think of gravity. It doesn't judge you when you fall. It simply is the law governing physical matter. Maat is cosmic gravity for consciousness, the fundamental force that governs truth, balance, and natural order throughout existence. But here's why this knowledge was buried. The systems controlling our world needed you to believe truth is relative, that order comes from human institutions, that balance is just opinion. A population that doesn't understand the actual laws governing reality, easily controlled. You feel her absence everywhere, in the chaos surrounding you, in that deep ache for unshakable truth. That longing isn't nostalgia, it's Maat calling you back into alignment with the hidden physics of existence itself. Here's what they never told you about Maat, and once you understand this, everything about reality itself shifts into focus. Maat isn't just another goddess in the Egyptian pantheon. She represents something so fundamentally different from every other spiritual concept you've encountered that it challenges the very foundation of how we think about divinity, truth, and existence itself. Every other deity you've studied has an origin story. Zeus was born from Kronos and Rhea. Buddha was born as Siddhartha Gautama. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Even the most powerful gods in every mythology have creation myths, birth narratives, stories of how they came to be. But Maat, she has no creation story whatsoever. She wasn't born from another deity. She wasn't fashioned from clay or cosmic materials. She wasn't spoken into existence by a creator god. The ancient Egyptian texts describe something that should make every spiritual seeker pause and reconsider everything they think they know about the nature of reality. Maat existed with Ra, the creator god, from the very beginning, not as his creation, but as his partner in creation itself. She's described simultaneously as both his daughter and his consort, language that seems contradictory until you realize they're trying to express something that transcends normal relationships between beings. Think about what this actually means. When Ra creates the universe, he doesn't create it and then impose order upon it afterward. He creates through Maat, through the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order. She is described as the divine architecture of reality itself. The universe doesn't exist first and then get organized. It comes into being through the law of order, through the principle of balance, through what we might call the baseline frequency of existence itself. This is perhaps the most sophisticated metaphysical statement ever recorded in human history, and most people walk right past it because they've been conditioned to think of Maat as just another mythological character. But the Egyptians weren't describing a person, they were describing a fundamental force, an uncreated principle that makes existence possible. Consider how revolutionary this understanding really is. Truth, justice, balance, and order aren't human inventions. They're not even divine inventions. They are primal, uncreated forces woven into the very fabric of what exists. Maat represents the recognition that there are certain principles so fundamental to reality that they cannot be created or destroyed. They simply are, and everything else emerges from them or falls apart without them. But here's where the spiritual theft becomes most insidious. By turning Maat into a personified goddess, by giving her a human form, a feathered headdress, and wings, they transformed this profound understanding of universal law into what appears to be just another story character. Once she becomes a goddess with a name and a face, she seems like something you can choose to believe in or not, like something that belongs to ancient Egypt, rather than to the fundamental structure of reality itself. You don't believe in gravity, you live within it. You don't choose whether to accept the laws of physics, you navigate them every moment of your existence. Similarly, you don't believe in Maat, you're living within her laws right now, whether you recognize them or not. Every choice you make either aligns with the principles of truth and balance or creates dissonance against them. There is no third option. This is why the Egyptian spiritual path was so radically different from what most people understand as religion. They weren't worshipping gods in the way we typically think of worship. They were learning to live in Maat, learning to become walking embodiments of truth, balance, and cosmic harmony. This isn't about following rules imposed from outside. It's about aligning with the fundamental frequency of existence itself. When you lie, you create dissonance against Maat. When you act with integrity, you harmonize with her. When you pursue balance in your relationships, your work, your inner life, you're not following arbitrary moral guidelines. You're aligning with the same principles that keep stars in their orbits and create the perfect geometry of snowflakes. From stellar mechanics to personal ethics, everything operates according to the same underlying principles of balance and harmony. Maat is the invisible goddess whose presence is so total and fundamental that, like the air we breathe, we've been conditioned not to see her at all. She's not absent from modern life. She's the reason modern life is possible. Every time justice prevails over corruption, every time truth emerges despite attempts to suppress it, every time natural balance reasserts itself after disruption, you're witnessing Maat in action. Ancient Egyptians understood that becoming conscious of these universal principles and learning to embody them was the most demanding and simultaneously most empowering spiritual path possible. It's far more challenging than following external rules motivated by fear or reward. It requires you to develop the sensitivity to feel when you're in harmony with truth and when you're creating dissonance against it. This understanding of universal law goes much deeper than what can be shared on public platforms. The most profound insights about living in harmony with these cosmic principles are reserved for those seriously committed to this path. If you're ready to explore these deeper teachings, join our exclusive Insights Academy newsletter community, where subscribers receive advanced insights not available anywhere else, plus a free copy of the Kybalion, but this opportunity won't remain available indefinitely. What makes Maat so revolutionary is that she represents the recognition that the universe itself has an ethical dimension. This isn't morality imposed by human society or commanded by distant deities. This is the understanding that truth, justice, and balance are built into the very structure of what exists. You can work with these principles or against them, but you cannot escape them. The Egyptian path was about learning to read these invisible laws, to sense when you're in alignment and when you're creating chaos, and to gradually transform yourself into a conscious participant in cosmic harmony rather than an unconscious source of disruption. This is why their spiritual practices focused so intensely on truth-telling, on balance in all aspects of life, and on developing the inner sensitivity to navigate by these fundamental principles. Maat isn't ancient history. She's the eternal present, the unchanging foundation beneath all change, the uncreated force that makes creation possible. Once you begin to see her, you realize she's been there all along, waiting for you to remember what the Egyptians never forgot, that you're not separate from the cosmic order, you're an expression of it, and learning to embody that truth is the real spiritual work. Look, there's one image from ancient Egypt that's been burned into our collective consciousness so deeply that even people who've never studied Egyptian mythology can picture it instantly. You know the one I'm talking about, the weighing of the heart scene. Anubis holding the scales, a human heart on one side, and that single feather on the other. Maybe Osiris sitting in judgment nearby, looking stern and otherworldly. But here's what's going to blow your mind. Almost everything you think you know about this scene is completely backwards. And I mean completely. Most people see this as some kind of ancient courtroom drama, the judgment of the dead, where Anubis plays the role of bailiff and Osiris acts as the ultimate judge, deciding whether you're good enough for the afterlife. But the central figure in this entire cosmic process? It's not Anubis. It's not Osiris. It's Maat, appearing in the form of that single ostrich feather. That feather isn't just a prop in someone else's judgment scene. That feather is the judgment. Maat, as we explored earlier, is the uncreated force of cosmic truth itself. So when your heart is weighed against her feather, you're not being judged by some external deity making moral pronouncements about your life. You're being measured against the fundamental frequency of reality itself. And here's where the language we use matters more than you might think. This shouldn't even be called the judgment of the dead. That's loaded terminology that completely misses the point. What's actually happening is the measurement of a life, with Maat serving as the universal standard of measurement. Now, I need you to forget everything you've been told about this being a test of moral perfection. The ancient Egyptians weren't naive children who believed humans could live flawless lives. They understood human nature, human mistakes, human complexity, far better than that. The feather of truth isn't asking, were you perfect? It's asking something infinitely more profound. Were you true? This is where it gets fascinating from a vibrational perspective. What's being measured isn't your moral report card, it's your spiritual density. Think of it as a frequency test. Does your heart's vibration, which represents the sum total of your life's intentions and actions, resonate in harmony with the frequency of cosmic truth? A heavy heart isn't heavy because it's evil in some simplistic moral sense. A heavy heart is weighed down by the dissonance that comes from living out of alignment with your authentic self and universal truth. It's heavy with the burden of lies you've carried, the density of deception you've practiced, the discord of cruelty you've chosen, the friction that builds up when your actions consistently go against your inner knowing. On the flip side, a light heart, one that balances perfectly with Maat's feather, isn't light because it belongs to a saint. It's light because it has lived in integrity. It's free from the accumulated weight of self-betrayal. It vibrates at the frequency of authenticity. This isn't about good versus evil in the way we've been programmed to think about morality. This is about harmony versus dissonance. It's pure physics, but applied to consciousness and spiritual development. Now, you've probably heard about the 42 negative confessions, those statements the deceased was supposed to recite during this process. Things like, I have not stolen, I have not killed, I have not told lies. But here's another massive misunderstanding. These weren't commandments handed down from on high that you were supposed to obey out of fear. They were spiritual guidance for maintaining a light heart throughout your life. Think of them as a checklist for living in Maat. When you can honestly make these confessions, your heart naturally maintains its lightness. The confession becomes a simple statement of fact, not a desperate plea for mercy. I have not stolen. Isn't you hoping to convince some cosmic judge of your worthiness? It's you recognizing that because you chose not to steal, your heart doesn't carry the weight of theft's dissonance. But here's what really connects this ancient wisdom to your life right now. You don't have to wait until death to know how you're doing in this cosmic measurement system. Your conscience, your intuition, that deep inner knowing that speaks to you in quiet moments, that's your personal feather of Maat operating in real time. Pay attention to how you feel when you speak truth, even when it's difficult. Notice that sense of lightness, of alignment, of peace that settles over you. That's your heart being as light as a feather. You're experiencing the vibrational harmony between your actions and cosmic truth. Contrast that with how you feel when you lie, even about small things. That heavy, churning sensation in your chest, that dissonance that makes you want to avoid your own reflection, that's your heart gathering weight. That's the immediate feedback system of Maat, showing you the spiritual density you're accumulating. The ancient Egyptians understood something we've largely forgotten. The final judgment isn't some surprise event that catches your soul off guard. Your soul keeps a running tally of your vibrational state in real time. Every choice you make either adds weight or maintains lightness. Every moment of authenticity or deception registers immediately on your internal scales. Maat isn't some distant goddess sitting on a throne somewhere, waiting to judge you when you die. She's the living feedback system of the universe, speaking to you constantly through the feelings in your heart. When you feel that expansion, that lightness, that sense of, yes, this is right, that's Maat confirming your alignment with truth. When you feel contraction, heaviness, that nagging sense that something's off, that's Maat alerting you to dissonance before it becomes permanent spiritual weight. This transforms everything about how we understand both ancient wisdom and modern spiritual development. The weighing of the heart isn't an event, it's a continuous process happening every moment of your life. And the beautiful thing is, unlike so many spiritual concepts that feel abstract or unreachable, this one gives you immediate, tangible feedback. Your heart is your compass, and Maat is the magnetic north it's always pointing toward. Learn to read its signals, and you'll never need to wonder about your spiritual standing again. When we explored how Maat's feather measures the vibrational frequency of your heart rather than judging your moral choices, we touched on something profound. Maat operates by universal principles that transcend human understanding. But here's what will completely reshape how you see reality itself. Maat isn't just involved in human affairs. She's the fundamental operating system of existence itself. The ancient Egyptians called her the daughter of Ra, but this wasn't about family relationships. This was a statement of cosmic function. When Ra, the creative consciousness, brought the universe into being, he didn't create through raw power or divine whim. He created through Maat's principle. She is the direct, active expression of the Creator's mind, the intelligence that transforms potential into structured reality. Think about this for a moment. Modern physics has identified 4 fundamental forces that govern our entire cosmos: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. These aren't random energies floating around space. They're expressions of Maat, principles of order and balance that allow a structured universe to exist instead of formless chaos. Consider gravity. It's not just a force pulling objects together. It's Maat, ensuring that cosmic relationships maintain perfect equilibrium. Stars don't randomly crash into each other because gravitational Maat creates predictable, harmonious orbits. Our planet doesn't spin wildly off into space because Maat's principle keeps it in precise relationship with the Sunday. The same mathematical perfection governs atomic structures, electrons maintaining exact distances from nuclei, creating the stable matter that forms your body, this planet, distant galaxies. Look at the geometry of crystals forming deep in the earth. Nobody teaches quartz how to grow in perfect hexagonal patterns. This is Maat expressing herself as sacred geometry, creating order and beauty according to principles that exist beyond physical matter. The spiral patterns in seashells, the branching structures of rivers and blood vessels, the precise angles in flower petals. This is divine mathematics playing out across every scale of existence. The cyclical rhythms of seasons demonstrate Maat's temporal architecture. Spring doesn't arrive randomly or because some deity feels like bringing warmth. It emerges because Maat governs the Earth's relationship with solar energy, creating predictable cycles that allow life to flourish. Day and night, tides, the phases of the moon, these are all Maat orchestrating cosmic harmony through time itself. But here's where it gets revolutionary, and this concept will shatter most religious foundations you've encountered. Even the gods live on Maat. They don't stand above cosmic law, they're subject to the same principles of balance and truth that govern everything else. This completely overturns the typical image of gods as arbitrary, emotional, tyrannical rulers who can do whatever they please. In the Egyptian understanding, divine beings feed on truth, order, and harmony. When they act in alignment with Maat, they remain strong and vital. When they move against Maat's principles, they suffer consequences just like anyone else. They weaken, fall into dissonance, and lose their power. Ultimate authority in this system doesn't belong to the strongest god or the most feared deity. It belongs to the truth principle itself. Maat is the standard by which even divine actions are measured. This creates a universe where justice isn't dependent on the mood or favoritism of supernatural beings, but on unchanging principles of cosmic balance. The Egyptians built their entire civilization around this understanding. The pharaoh's primary sacred duty wasn't constructing monuments or conquering neighboring lands, it was upholding Maat on earth. He served as the human conduit, ensuring that human society mirrored the divine order operating throughout the cosmos. Every decision, every law, every ritual was evaluated by one standard. Does this maintain or restore Maat? The prosperity of the kingdom, the predictable flooding of the Nile, justice among the people. These were all indicators of how successfully the pharaoh was channeling cosmic harmony into human affairs. When famine struck, when drought parched the land, when civil war erupted, these weren't seen as random misfortunes or punishments from angry gods. They were direct feedback indicating that the pharaoh had failed to live in Maat. This created a level of cosmic responsibility that's almost unimaginable to modern leaders who blame external factors for societal problems. Imagine if today's leaders understood that their personal alignment with truth and justice directly affected natural disasters, economic stability, and social harmony. Imagine if they recognized that lying, corruption, and self-serving decisions would inevitably create measurable consequences in the physical world around them. This isn't primitive superstition, it's recognition of how consciousness and reality interconnect. When human societies operate according to Maat's principles of truth, balance, and justice, they create coherent energy fields that support life and prosperity. When they violate these principles through deception, exploitation, and imbalance, they generate dissonance that manifests as conflict, disease, and environmental destruction. The ancient Egyptians understood that Maat isn't just a nice philosophical concept or moral guideline. She's the active intelligence maintaining the structural integrity of existence itself. From the quantum level to galactic clusters, from individual heartbeats to civilizational cycles, the same principles of order, balance, and truth keep reality functioning. This is why understanding Maat transforms not just your spiritual practice, but your entire relationship with existence. You're not separate from cosmic order, you're an active participant in it. Your thoughts, choices, and actions either support Maat's harmonizing influence or create interference patterns that disrupt the natural flow of balance. The Egyptians knew that living in Maat meant aligning your personal frequency with the fundamental operating principles of the universe itself. This is the real meaning of divine connection, not pleasing supernatural beings, but harmonizing with the intelligence that structures all reality. Now, here's where the ancient Egyptian worldview becomes absolutely crucial for understanding our modern predicament. The Egyptians understood that Maat didn't exist in isolation. She had an opposite force they called Isfet. But here's what's fascinating. Isfet wasn't evil in the way we typically think about good versus evil. It wasn't some demonic entity or malevolent force plotting humanity's downfall. Isfet was simply chaos, lies, disorder, and injustice, the natural state that emerges when things fall out of alignment with cosmic law. Think of it this way. Isfet is entropy pulling structures back into dissolution. It's the dissonance that arises when lies replace truth. It's the suffering that comes from unbalanced living. When you remember that Maat represents the fundamental harmony, frequency of the universe, Isfet becomes clearer. It's what happens when you're out of tune with that frequency. For the ancient Egyptians, the entire human experience was a constant conscious choice in every moment between acting to generate Maat or acting to generate Isfet. This wasn't about fighting some cosmic battle between good and evil forces. It was about choosing between harmony and dissonance, truth and illusion, order and chaos. The universe, in their understanding, simply reflects your choices back to you with perfect impersonal precision, just like that feather scale we discussed earlier. When you lie, you create Isfet. When you act unjustly, you generate Isfet. When you live out of balance with natural law, you're contributing to the chaotic forces that pull reality apart at the seams. But when you speak truth, act with justice, and maintain balance, you're actively creating Maat. You're participating in the cosmic order that holds everything together. Now here's the question that should be burning in your mind. If an entire civilization, one of history's most advanced and longest, lasting, built their entire society on this fundamental principle of cosmic truth and order, where did it go? Why do we now live in a world that seems to be drowning in Isfet? Why does chaos, deception, and injustice appear to be winning? The answer will fundamentally change how you see our modern world. The very idea of a single, universal, underlying truth threatens any system that seeks to control reality for its own benefit. Maat's suppression wasn't an accident. It was a necessary prerequisite for the chaotic world we now inhabit. Modern control systems, whether political, corporate, or social, actually thrive in Isfet states. They benefit from division, confusion, and populations that have no firm anchor in truth. A society that believes truth is relative, that order is arbitrary, and that there are no universal laws governing human behavior, is incredibly easy to manipulate. People without a cosmic compass will accept whatever direction they're pointed in. The Maat concept had to be ridiculed, dismissed as primitive thinking, and systematically erased from human consciousness. This erasure happened in stages, and understanding these stages reveals exactly how we ended up where we are today. The first step was replacing universal law with man-made law. Maat teaches that truth and justice are inherent in the fabric of the cosmos itself. You don't need kings or priests or politicians to tell you what's right, because you can know by aligning with your inner sense of harmony, that same inner knowing that would make your heart light as a feather on the cosmic scales. But the new power systems completely inverted this understanding. They declared that law wasn't cosmic, but handed down from external authority, kings, churches, governments, institutions. People were systematically taught to stop looking inward for their moral compass and start looking outward for rule books. Personal conscience became irrelevant. Obedience to external authority became the highest virtue. Instead of asking, does this align with cosmic truth? People learned to ask, is this legal? Instead of, does this create harmony? They learned to ask, will I get in trouble? This shift is absolutely massive in its implications. When people believe that right and wrong come from external sources, they become dependent on those sources. They lose their ability to discern truth independently. They become controllable. Think about how this plays out in practice. Someone operating from Maat principles would look at a law and ask whether it serves justice, truth, and cosmic balance. If it doesn't, they would recognize it as illegitimate regardless of who wrote it. But someone trained to look only to external authority accepts any law as valid simply because it exists. This is why we have legal systems that often seem to work directly against justice. This is why we have regulations that serve corporate interests over human welfare. This is why we have institutions that claim to represent truth while actively suppressing it. The entire framework has been inverted. The ancient Egyptians would look at our world and immediately recognize it as a civilization drowning in Isfet, not because some evil force conquered us, but because we've been systematically disconnected from our ability to recognize and align with Maat. We've been trained to generate chaos instead of order, to accept lies instead of seeking truth, to create imbalance instead of harmony. But here's what they understood that we've forgotten. This isn't permanent. Isfet only dominates when Maat is abandoned. The cosmic order is still there, still operating, still available to anyone who chooses to align with it. The question is whether enough people will remember how to make that choice before the chaos becomes irreversible. The path back begins with recognizing that your inner sense of truth and justice isn't primitive superstition. It's your connection to the same cosmic frequency that the Egyptians called Maat. When you start trusting that inner knowing over external authorities, you begin the process of restoration. The erasure of Maat from our collective consciousness wasn't just about forgetting an ancient goddess. That was merely the first domino. The second, far more devastating blow came when we allowed truth itself to become negotiable. Look around you. We live in a world where the phrase, "my truth," has replaced the truth, where facts are dismissed as opinions, where objective reality gets voted on like a popularity contest. This isn't progress or enlightenment. This is Isfet's greatest victory. When there's no cosmic baseline, no universal standard of truth and balance, anything can be justified. Literally anything. The ancient Egyptians understood something we've forgotten. Truth isn't subjective. Maat represented universal law, not human law, not cultural preference, but the fundamental principles that govern all existence. When we abandoned this understanding, we didn't just lose a philosophical concept. We lost our anchor to reality itself. Think about how this plays out in practice. Politicians stand before cameras and call lies alternative facts. Media outlets present completely contradictory versions of the same events, and we're told both can be true simultaneously. Social media algorithms feed us information bubbles where everyone agrees with us, creating the illusion that our personal perspective equals universal truth. This relativistic fog isn't an accident. It's the perfect environment for manipulation. Without Maat's anchor, human minds become like ships without compasses, tossed by whatever propaganda or social pressure happens to be strongest at the moment. We've created a civilization where the loudest voice wins, where emotional manipulation trumps evidence, where complexity gets reduced to tribal loyalty. This is Isfet energy in its purest form. The consequences are everywhere once you know how to look. Our political systems have become theaters of division, thriving on conflict rather than seeking balance. Politicians gain power not by solving problems but by amplifying chaos, keeping people angry and afraid. The more divided we are, the easier we become to control. Ancient Egypt would have recognized this immediately as Isfet consuming the social order. Media landscapes profit from fear and outrage because balanced, truthful reporting doesn't generate clicks. The business model literally depends on keeping people in states of anxiety and conflict. News becomes entertainment. Entertainment becomes propaganda, and propaganda becomes indistinguishable from reality. We're drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Social structures promote competition over cooperation, isolation over community. We're taught that looking out for ourselves is natural law, that helping others makes us weak, that scarcity is inevitable. These aren't truths. They're Isfet principles dressed up as common sense. Maat civilizations understood that individual well-being and collective harmony were inseparable. You can't have one without the other. Economic systems create grotesque imbalances that would have horrified ancient Egyptian society. The pharaohs, for all their power, understood they were responsible for maintaining Maat, ensuring the Nile flooded, the harvests succeeded, the people were fed. Today's power structures extract wealth from the many to benefit the few, calling this natural market forces when it's actually organized chaos. Our environment is being pushed to the brink of collapse because we've forgotten we're part of a larger cosmic order. Maat taught that humans exist within natural law, not above it. We've built an entire civilization on the Isfet principle that we can take without giving back, grow without limits, consume without consequences. The planet itself is now showing us the inevitable result of living in violation of universal balance. Here's what most people don't realize. This isn't a series of unfortunate accidents or the result of human nature being inherently flawed. This is the predictable outcome of a civilization that has collectively forgotten the fundamental principle of cosmic harmony. We've built a world in direct violation of universal law, and we're experiencing the inevitable feedback from that dissonance. But here's the crucial point. The law itself hasn't disappeared. Maat is patient. She's not punishing us. She's simply waiting for us to remember. The path out of Isfet's chaos has always been the same. Return to truth. Return to balance. Return to her. And something remarkable is happening. Maat consciousness is returning. You can see it in the global shift that's occurring, the great awakening of conscience that's sweeping across humanity, the relentless demands for transparency in government, authenticity in relationships, justice in social systems. These aren't political movements. They're Maat energy reasserting itself in human consciousness. Environmental movements worldwide represent our collective soul crying out for balance with natural law. Social justice movements demand the restoration of cosmic order, where every being has inherent worth. The hunger for truth that's driving people to question official narratives, to seek authentic spiritual practices, to reconnect with ancient wisdom, this is Maat calling us home. People are growing tired of living in Isfet energy. The constant conflict, the endless lies, the spiritual emptiness of consumer culture. It's exhausting because it violates our deepest nature. We're remembering that we're meant for something greater than survival and competition. We're meant for truth, harmony, and cosmic alignment. You're part of that remembering. The fact that you're here, learning about Maat, questioning the chaos around you, that's not coincidence. That's Maat consciousness awakening in you, calling you back to your true nature as a being of truth and balance. The war against truth may have conquered our civilization temporarily, but truth itself is eternal. Maat endures. And she's rising again through each person who chooses reality over illusion, balance over chaos, cosmic law over human manipulation. The question isn't whether Maat will return. She never left. The question is whether you'll recognize her voice calling you back to who you really are. You've seen how Isfet has woven itself into the fabric of our civilization, turning truth into a negotiable commodity and reality into a marketplace of competing narratives. But here's what the ancient Egyptians understood that we've forgotten. Maat isn't just a cosmic principle you contemplate, she's a living practice you embody. Every single day, with every choice you make, you're either feeding the feather of truth or adding weight to the scales of chaos. The path back to Maat begins with something so simple it's revolutionary, so basic it's terrifying: radical honesty with yourself. Not the surface-level honesty where you admit you ate too much ice cream last night, but the bone-deep, soul-shaking honesty that looks directly at the stories you've been telling yourself about your own life. Right now, as you're listening to this, your mind is probably running a dozen background programs of self-deception. These aren't malicious lies. They're survival mechanisms, comfort blankets, ways your psyche has learned to navigate a world that punishes too much truth. But every convenient fiction you maintain about yourself adds another gram to your heart when it meets Maat's feather. Let me ask you some questions, and I want you to notice your immediate response, not the answer you think you should give, but the visceral reaction that happens before your rational mind kicks in. Are you truly happy in your current job? Or are you staying because it's safe, because it pays the bills, because leaving would require admitting you've been settling? Is your primary relationship actually nurturing your soul, or have you convinced yourself that good enough is the same as fulfilling? When you look in the mirror, are you seeing someone living aligned with their deepest values, or someone who's compromised so gradually they can't remember what those values even were? Feel that discomfort rising? That's the sound of Maat's feather brushing against the accumulated weight of small self-betrayals. The Egyptian texts describe the weighing of the heart as happening after death, but the truth is, it's happening right now, in this moment, as you confront the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be. This level of self-inquiry is absolutely terrifying because truth has a nasty habit of demanding change. It's much easier to stay in the job that's slowly killing your spirit than to face the uncertainty of finding work that actually feeds your soul. It's more comfortable to maintain relationships that ask nothing of you than to seek connections that challenge you to grow. But here's what the ancient wisdom keepers knew. A heart heavy with self-deception can never find peace, no matter how much external success or comfort you accumulate. The practice starts small. Stop saying, "I'm fine," when you're not fine. Stop agreeing to plans that make your soul contract just to avoid minor social discomfort. Stop pretending you don't notice when someone treats you poorly because addressing it feels too complicated. These seem like tiny things, but they're the building blocks of a life lived in Maat alignment. Then you extend this honesty outward. You start speaking truth with compassion but without compromise. This doesn't mean becoming brutally blunt or using honesty as an excuse to be cruel. Maat's truth is always balanced with love, always delivered in service of harmony rather than destruction. But it means you stop saying yes when your soul is screaming no. It means you stop participating in conversations that require you to pretend things are other than they are. I watched a friend of mine practice this recently. She'd been nodding along in family gatherings for years while relatives made comments that violated her deepest beliefs about how we should treat other human beings. She told herself she was keeping the peace, being diplomatic. But she realized she was actually enabling harm and teaching her young daughter that truth is less important than comfort. So she started responding, not with anger or judgment, but with simple, clear statements of her actual values. "I don't see it that way," became her gentle revolution. Some family members were uncomfortable. Some conversations got awkward. But her daughter started seeing what it looks like when someone chooses truth over convenience. This brings us to the second pillar of Maat practice. Embracing right action. Maat isn't a passive principle. She's not about sitting in meditation hoping the world becomes more balanced while you do nothing. She's an active force that expresses itself through conscious choice-making in every domain of your life. Every single thing you do is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. The food you eat, does it support regenerative agriculture or industrial systems that poison the soil? The products you buy, are they made by companies that treat their workers with dignity, or ones that maximize profit through exploitation? The work you do, does it add genuine value to the world, or does it extract resources while creating nothing of lasting worth? The way you treat the person serving your coffee, the patience you show when someone's driving slowly in front of you, the attention you give when a friend is struggling, all of it matters. This isn't about perfection or purity, it's about awareness. It's about recognizing that in a world where every corporation has a marketing department dedicated to making you feel good about choices that serve their interests rather than yours, conscious decision-making becomes a radical act. I know a woman who transformed her entire relationship with consumption by asking one simple question before every purchase. Does this create more harmony or more chaos? She stopped buying clothes made in sweatshops, even when they were beautiful and affordable. She started supporting local businesses, even when it was less convenient. She chose quality items that would last rather than cheap things that would break. Her individual choices seemed small, but they rippled outward. Her friends started asking where she found such well-made things. Her family began questioning their own consumption patterns. Her spending became an expression of her values rather than a mindless habit. But to live this way requires something our culture actively discourages: stillness. Maat's voice, that inner knowing, the feeling of the feather's weight, is quiet. Isfet's world, by contrast, is deliberately loud, chaotic, endlessly distracting. Turn on the news, scroll through social media, walk through a shopping mall. Everything is designed to keep you in a state of reactive overwhelm where you can't hear your own inner wisdom. The ancient Egyptians built temples as spaces of silence where Ma'at's presence could be felt. You need to create these spaces in your own life. This is why meditation matters, not as spiritual bypassing or escapism, but as a practical tool for tuning into truth's frequency. This is why time in nature is essential, not because trees are magical, but because they exist in perfect alignment with natural law, and their presence reminds your nervous system what balance actually feels like. When you cultivate this stillness regularly, something remarkable happens. You start making choices not from fear, not from social pressure, not from the endless mental chatter of shoulds and shouldn'ts, but from a deep, grounded alignment with what serves the highest good. You become a living, breathing island of Maat in an ocean of chaos, and that's exactly what the world needs right now. The transformation of civilization doesn't begin with changing others. It begins with becoming someone who embodies the principles you want to see in the world. Ma'at's return starts with you, in this moment, with your next choice. Here's the profound truth that changes everything. You are your own judge, right now. In this moment, the weighing of your heart isn't some distant post-death event waiting in the afterlife. It's happening continuously, every second you're alive. Your life itself is the hall of truth. Your reality is the scale, and every aspect of your existence is giving you real-time feedback about how heavy or light your heart has become. Look around at your life, your health, your relationships, your peace of mind, the quality of your sleep, the energy you feel when you wake up. These aren't random circumstances happening to you. They're readouts. They're the universe's immediate feedback system showing you exactly how aligned or misaligned you are with Ma'at. When chaos and suffering dominate your experience, the universe isn't punishing you for past mistakes. It's lovingly, persistently showing you where you've drifted out of balance, extending an invitation every single moment to make different choices, to lighten your heart, to return to truth. This understanding transforms everything because it means you're not waiting for some future cosmic accounting. You're receiving immediate, continuous guidance about your alignment with universal law. Think about your own experience. Remember the last time you acted with complete integrity, that sense of rightness, that feeling of being in flow with something larger than yourself. That wasn't just a nice feeling. That was Maat's guidance system confirming your alignment with cosmic truth. Now recall a time when you compromised your deepest values. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken up, or you went along with something that felt fundamentally wrong. Remember that discomfort, that sense of being slightly sick to your stomach. That wasn't guilt or shame in the conventional sense. That was your internal Ma'at detector alerting you to misalignment. Your soul was literally feeling the weight being added to your heart. Consider the energy drain you experience when maintaining lies versus the vitality that comes from living authentically. When you're pretending to be someone you're not, when you're hiding parts of yourself or your truth, notice how exhausting it becomes. Every conversation requires careful monitoring. Every interaction demands you remember which version of yourself you're supposed to be. This isn't coincidence. It's Ma'at's feedback system showing you the energetic cost of living out of alignment with truth. Contrast that with moments of complete authenticity. When you speak your truth, even when it's difficult, even when others might not like it, there's an immediate sense of relief, of rightness. Your energy actually increases. You feel more alive, more connected to yourself and others. This is what the Egyptians understood, that living in Ma'at doesn't just prepare you for some future judgment, it makes life itself more vibrant and meaningful. This realization makes you incredibly powerful because you're no longer dependent on external authorities to tell you what's right or wrong. You have direct access to cosmic law through your own lived experience. Every choice you make generates immediate feedback through your health, relationships, circumstances, and inner state. You don't need priests or politicians or experts to interpret universal truth for you. You're receiving constant communication from the universe itself. This is precisely why Ma'at consciousness threatens every control system ever devised. When people understand they have direct access to cosmic truth through their own experience, they become self-sovereign. They can't be manipulated by those claiming special authority over truth because they're getting their guidance directly from source. They can't be controlled through fear of future punishment because they understand the feedback is immediate and corrective, not punitive. But this understanding also brings profound responsibility. You can no longer blame others for your life's condition because you're receiving constant guidance about whether your choices align with truth. Every relationship conflict, every health challenge, every financial struggle carries information about where you might be out of balance. This isn't victim blaming, it's radical empowerment. It means you have the tools to course correct in every moment. When you understand that your depression might be connected to living a life that doesn't reflect your authentic self, you can begin making different choices. When you recognize that your relationship conflicts often arise when you're not being honest about your needs or boundaries, you can start practicing radical truth-telling. When you notice that your energy crashes after spending time with certain people or in certain environments, you can honor that feedback and make adjustments. The ancient Egyptians understood that this real-time feedback system was preparation for the afterlife weighing, not a separate process. They believed the soul kept a running tally throughout life, recording every choice, every moment of alignment or misalignment with Maat. The final weighing of the heart simply revealed what was already known, whether a person had learned to live in harmony with cosmic truth. This makes the spiritual path incredibly practical. It's not about following abstract rules or performing religious rituals. It's about learning to read and respond to the universe's constant communication through your lived experience. When you feel that sense of rightness, that flow state, that deep peace, lean into it. Make more choices that generate those feelings. When you feel discord, tension, that subtle wrongness, pay attention. Something is calling for adjustment. Your body becomes a truth detector. Your emotions become a guidance system. Your circumstances become a mirror reflecting your level of alignment with universal law. You're not waiting for some future judgment because judgment, in the truest sense of discernment and course correction, is happening now. The invitation is simple. Start paying attention. Start treating your life as the sacred feedback system it actually island. Every moment offers you the choice to move toward Maat or away from it, and every moment shows you the consequences of that choice through your immediate experience. This is how you begin to live as your own judge, not in harsh self-condemnation, but in loving awareness of the constant guidance available to you through the magnificent feedback system of your own existence. Look around you right now. Something extraordinary is happening on this planet, and most people can feel it even if they can't name it. The relentless demand for transparency that's toppling governments and corporations. The mass exodus from soul-crushing jobs as people seek meaningful work. The explosive interest in ancient wisdom and spiritual practices. The growing distrust of institutions that once seemed unshakable. These aren't separate movements. They're all expressions of the same cosmic force returning to human consciousness after millennia of suppression. Maat is awakening in the collective human soul. Think about the patterns you're witnessing everywhere. People are walking away from careers that pay well but feel empty, choosing authenticity over financial security in ways that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. The wellness industry has exploded not because of clever marketing, but because humans are desperately seeking the balance and truth that Maat represents. Even the phrase, "speaking my truth," has become commonplace. That's Maat consciousness emerging through everyday language. The hunger for transparency is relentless now. Every leaked document, every whistleblower, every exposed corruption scandal creates a ripple effect that awakens more people to the reality that we've been living in Isfet, in systems built on deception, exploitation, and chaos masquerading as order. Social media, despite all its flaws, has created an unprecedented ability for truth to spread faster than those in power can contain it. Information that once took decades to surface now emerges in real time. But here's what makes this awakening different from previous spiritual movements. It's not just individual enlightenment people are seeking. There's a collective recognition that our environmental crisis, social inequality, political corruption, and personal suffering are all symptoms of the same disease. Humanity's disconnection from Maat principles. The climate activists aren't just fighting for the environment. They're fighting for cosmic balance. The social justice movements aren't just seeking equality. They're demanding the return of Maat's scales to human society. Watch how people respond to authenticity now versus even 10 years ago. Authentic leaders, artists, and teachers gain massive followings, not through manipulation or marketing tricks, but through genuine alignment with truth. Meanwhile, institutions and individuals still operating from Isfet consciousness are losing credibility at an accelerating rate. The old playbook of controlling information and manufacturing consent is failing because Maat consciousness naturally sees through deception. This awakening manifests differently across various spheres of life, but the underlying pattern is identical. In business, there's an unprecedented demand for ethical practices and corporate responsibility. Consumers are willing to pay more and go out of their way to support companies that operate with integrity. The rise of B corporations, sustainable business models, and stakeholder capitalism represents Maat principles infiltrating economic systems that were built purely on profit extraction. In relationships, people are demanding emotional honesty and authentic connection in ways that are dissolving traditional social facades. The old social contracts based on appearances and conformity are crumbling as individuals choose genuine intimacy over comfortable lies. Dating apps might seem superficial, but they've actually accelerated people's ability to find authentic connections by bypassing traditional social filtering systems. Technology itself is playing a fascinating role in this awakening. While it can be used for control and manipulation, its fundamental nature aligns with Maat principles. Information wants to be free, truth spreads faster than lies over time, and authentic voices rise above manufactured noise. The same platforms that spread misinformation also enable researchers, investigators, and truth-tellers to share evidence and connect with each other across geographical boundaries. Of course, this awakening faces tremendous resistance. Entrenched systems don't surrender power willingly. We're witnessing increasingly desperate attempts to maintain control through censorship, division tactics, fear campaigns, and the co-opting of awakening movements. When peaceful protests emerge, they're infiltrated by agents provocateurs. When alternative media gains traction, it faces deplatforming. When communities organize around truth and justice, they're targeted with disinformation campaigns designed to create internal conflict. But here's what those trying to maintain the old systems don't understand about Maat consciousness. It's not a political movement that can be defeated or a trend that can be reversed. It's the natural state of human awareness reasserting itself after generations of suppression. Truth has a way of emerging despite every attempt at suppression because it aligns with the fundamental structure of reality itself. Each individual who chooses radical honesty over comfortable lies becomes a node in a growing network of conscious beings. This creates what researchers call a resonance effect. Maat consciousness spreads organically through authentic example rather than forced conversion. When you embody integrity in your daily life, you give others permission to do the same. When you choose truth over social acceptance, you demonstrate that such choices are possible. This organic spread is why the awakening feels unstoppable despite the resistance it faces. Unlike ideological movements that require constant reinforcement and external validation, Maat consciousness is self-sustaining because it aligns people with their deepest nature and with reality itself. However, awakening in a world still largely operating from Isfet consciousness presents unique challenges. There's the loneliness of seeing truths that others aren't ready to acknowledge, the difficulty of maintaining integrity while working within corrupt systems, the temptation to become judgmental toward those who seem unconscious or willfully ignorant. The key to navigating these challenges lies in remembering that Maat consciousness includes compassion and patience. Everyone awakens at their own pace, and forcing awakening on others actually perpetuates Isfet patterns of control and coercion. Your role isn't to wake up others, it's to embody Maat principles so authentically that you become a living example of what's possible. Set boundaries without building walls. Speak truth without attacking those who aren't ready to hear it. Maintain integrity without becoming self-righteous. Remember that judgment itself can become a form of Isfet if it separates you from compassion and understanding. The most powerful thing you can do right now is continue your own alignment with Maat principles while staying connected to your heart. The global awakening doesn't need your anxiety or your anger. It needs your clarity, your authenticity, and your unwavering commitment to truth balanced with love. This awakening is happening whether we participate consciously or not, but your conscious participation accelerates it and makes the transition smoother for everyone involved. Here's the thing that most spiritual seekers completely miss about Maat. You're not supposed to worship her or pray to her for justice. you're supposed to become her. The entire Egyptian mystery teaching was pointing toward this single realization. The feather isn't something external that judges you. You are meant to become the feather. Think about what that actually means. When your heart weighs the same as Maat's feather, you've achieved perfect balance between your personal will and cosmic truth. You've become a living embodiment of universal law. Your very presence becomes a harmonizing force that naturally restores order wherever you go. This isn't some lofty, spiritual concept. It's intensely practical. When you embody Maat consciousness, you speak truth without attachment to how others react. You're not trying to convince anyone or win arguments. You simply state what you observe to be true and let the universe handle the consequences. This creates an incredible freedom because you're no longer walking on eggshells, calculating what people want to hear. I've watched this transformation in people who truly grasp this teaching. They stop being reactive. Someone can scream at them, lie about them, try to manipulate them, and they remain centered. Not because they're suppressing emotions, but because they've aligned themselves with something larger than personal drama. They respond from wisdom rather than woundedness. The decision-making process completely changes too. Instead of asking, "What's in this for me?" or "How do I protect myself?" you start asking, "What serves the highest good here?" This doesn't mean becoming a doormat. Sometimes what serves the whole requires fierce boundaries or difficult conversations. But you're making choices based on cosmic principles rather than ego protection. Here's what's fascinating. When you live this way, you don't need to preach to anyone or try to convert them to your worldview. Your presence alone exposes the lies around you through pure contrast. People start noticing that you're operating from a different frequency. Some get curious and want to understand what you've discovered. Others get triggered because your authenticity highlights their own pretense. You become a walking demonstration that another way of being is possible. Without saying a word about spirituality or Maat or cosmic law, you're showing people what integrity looks like in action. This is far more powerful than any sermon or social media post about awakening. Now, let me address the perfectionism trap that destroys most people who attempt this path. Embodying Maat doesn't mean never making mistakes or having perfect judgment in every situation. It means developing the sensitivity to recognize when you've fallen out of alignment and the humility to course correct quickly. Maybe you react defensively in a conversation instead of staying centered. The Maat, embodied response, isn't to beat yourself up or pretend it didn't happen. You acknowledge the misalignment, understand what triggered it, and adjust your approach. The universe responds to your genuine commitment to truth, not your performance of perfection. It's also not about judging others for their choices. When you're truly centered in Maat consciousness, you maintain your own standard regardless of what others are doing. If everyone around you is lying, you still tell the truth. If everyone is operating from fear, you still choose love. If everyone is reactive, you still respond with wisdom. This isn't withdrawal from the world, it's engaging with the world from an unshakable center. You participate fully in life while remaining anchored to cosmic principles. You're in the chaos, but not of it. The ancient Egyptians understood this through their concept of Pharaoh. The Pharaoh wasn't just a political leader. He was meant to be a living embodiment of Maat on earth. His job was to maintain cosmic order through his own alignment with universal law. When the Pharaoh lived in Maat, the entire kingdom reflected that harmony. In our modern context, each person has the opportunity to become their own Pharaoh. You take responsibility for maintaining Maat in your sphere of influence, your family, your workplace, your community. You become a stabilizing force that others can rely on for truth and balance. The ripple effects of this embodiment are extraordinary. When you consistently operate from Maat consciousness, it naturally influences others to examine their own alignment. Not through pressure or preaching, but through the magnetic pull of authentic power. People are starving for real truth in a world full of manipulation and pretense. You also create pockets of sanity in increasingly chaotic environments. Your home becomes a sanctuary. Your workplace becomes more harmonious. Your friendships deepen because people know they can trust you to be real with them. You're contributing to the larger awakening happening globally, one authentic interaction at a time. Here's the profound truth that changes everything. In every breath, every decision, every interaction, you have the choice to embody Maat or contribute to Isfet. The universe responds to your choice with perfect precision, not as reward or punishment, but as the natural consequence of cosmic law. Choose truth, and reality aligns to support truth around you. Choose deception, and you find yourself surrounded by lies and confusion. Choose balance, and opportunities for harmony appear. Choose chaos, and your experience reflects that chaos back to you. This is happening right now, in this moment. Maat isn't something you achieve once and then possess forever. It's a living practice, a moment-by-moment choice to align with cosmic truth. The feather isn't waiting for you in some future judgment hall. It's available right now through your decision to embody balance, integrity, and universal love. You don't need special training or years of study. You don't need to join a mystery school or find a guru. You simply need to choose, in this breath, to become the truth you want to see in the world. That choice transforms not just your life, but contributes to the transformation of consciousness on Earth. If this video resonated with you and you're ready to embody Maat consciousness in your daily life, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."